each community is very unique. It's shaped by its history, their local businesses, their cultures, their traditions. And so you need to be able to kind of understand that and immerse yourself in it in order to see, long-term success as opposed to just kind of that project-based um, approach.
Welcome to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc., where we feature experts in growth and brand visibility for law firms in architecture, engineering, and construction firms. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, and welcome to Spill the Ink. I'm Michelle Calcote King. I am your host, and I'm the principal and president of Reputation Inc. We are a public relations and thought leadership marketing agency for B2B professional services firms, including architecture, engineering, and construction firms. To learn more, go to rep-inc, that's inc with a K.com. So, when you are entering a new market and you want to make a splash, AEC firms must identify and reinforce their differentiators. But some fall into the trap of assuming that just because something that worked well in one market is going to work well in this new market. Suzanne Epps is with me today to talk about why AEC marketers should reject the urge to carbon copy their past approaches and how they can lean into their differentiators more successfully. Suzanne is the Director of Marketing and Growth at Optima Engineering, where she recently helped the firm open its first office in the Greenville, South Carolina market. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to have you here. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at Optima.
So I joined Optima in 2021. My career into AEC, like many people, was kind of unconventional or non-traditional, kind of fell into it. I originally, after college, got into commercial real estate brokerage and development. So being a part of a developing firm, was where I kind of realized that I really enjoyed that construction part of the job. Um, so in that 2008, 2009 recession era, made a move to North Carolina, where I continued in the commercial real estate brokerage industry. And then I decided it was kind of time for a change. I've been doing it for a really long time, and made the move, took the leap of faith into AEC and joined Optima, which has been uh, one of the best career decisions. Moving into AEC, it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. And Optima Engineering just had a really great reputation in the industry. When I joined in 2021, we just had two offices, Charlotte and Raleigh, Charlotte being our headquarters. And since then, we've added two more offices, one in Asheville, North Carolina, and then most recently Greenville.
Oh, awesome.
Uh,
I
yeah,
love Greenville. It's such a great town.
it's amazing. It has all the charm of Charleston, but just a real more of kind of that family, less tourism kind of feel. It's a really great community, and we've really enjoyed it. So we're a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and technology consulting firm. We work in a variety of market sectors, almost all of them except for residential. We do K-12, municipal and government facilities and buildings, and commercial. They're kind of our top three. And then we also have teams that focus on mission critical data centers, higher ed, healthcare, industrial. And then one of kind of something that we're really proud of is being an early adopter and at the forefront of sustainable designs and renewable energy. So for like nearly 2 decades, we've been working on that and been a regional leader in net zero energy designs.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. So tell me about entering the Greenville market. And, you were telling my producer, Sophia, about, when you went into that market, one of the things you really thought about was, look, a lot of AEC firms might just kind of take what they've done in other markets and just kind of replicate that. But you knew it was really important to not do that. And, every market has a bit of, every market can be really different, and to think through that. So tell me about that experience and what you learned through that, and maybe just about that expansion into that market.
Yeah, so we entered the Greenville office last year in October, so still a very new office. It's been about 4 months.
Yeah.
We That was not a cold market entry. We have been doing work in South Carolina since the inception of Optima, but it was more on the private sector and the commercial side of things. One of the hurdles that we have come up against, and part of the decision to move into the South Carolina market, was that public sector work. So really being able to put some roots down in South Carolina, because we have been doing work there and we wanted to be a part of that community. So being able to, you know, come in there and have a little bit of a warm entry. We had some clients, but also realizing that there's a lot of new opportunities there, of firms that we haven't necessarily worked with, and we have to build, we need to build that brand presence in the market.
Mm. What were some of the ways that you did that? Tell me about what were some of the tactics that you used?
So, you know, entering a new market, we wanted to make sure that we thought about more of the community. We didn't want to be somebody that just kind of came in and it was about the bottom line and the revenue. It was about being a part of the community for us. That's something that we're pretty proud of in all of the markets that we're in. So I've taken the opportunity to really learn that it's not always just about numbers. It's about meeting people, and you know understanding that community, which is where kind of that, how it's not, you can't just carbon copy. What works in Charlotte doesn't work in Raleigh. What works in Raleigh doesn't work in Greenville. Each community is very unique. It's shaped by its history, their local businesses, their cultures, their traditions. And so you need to be able to kind of understand that and immerse yourself in it in order to see, long-term success, as opposed to just kind of that project-based um, approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Optima decided to build a physical office there. How did you leverage that office?
So going into South Carolina has always been a long-term strategic goal for Optima. We wanted to make sure that we did it at the right time and that it was the right move for us. We evaluated Charleston, Columbia, Greenville, kind of looking at a lot of the different factors, economic, just growth and proximity. Greenville was the best fit for Optima. It with its proximity to Charlotte, our headquarters, and then we have another office in Asheville. So obviously Raleigh's our farthest office, but I'm able to kind of visit all the offices. So that's been something really great. And I think, it's growth within, like, having those major investments that have come in manufacturing, life sciences, and then just their overall investment into their own infrastructure was something that really lent to that decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine having that physical space says to the community, hey, we're invested here. We're a part of this community now, versus not having that space. And, it gives that commitment factor.
Right. We didn't want to be somebody that was just doing work in
Hmm.
South Carolina. We wanted to be amongst the business community and in with, a fabric of that community, not just, teaming or kind of doing a project and stepping back out. We wanted to contribute,
Hmm.
into the community.
And so when you are entering a new market, and I know you guys were already doing some work there, but when you're entering a new market, the AEC industry is such a relationship industry. How do you go about helping your seller doers build the relationships necessary to continue to grow? How do you help facilitate that?
Um, so a lot of that has been, um, it's a little intimidating at times. You're kind of the new kid on campus.
Hmm.
So we've really embraced asking questions and
Mm.
getting to know the community, not coming in and telling them what we know. It's been about, we we wanted to enter the market and learn about their community and their business models and what works there? What are the industry organizations that
Mhm.
you're going to find most people leaning towards? In Raleigh, we have a very robust chamber community
Mm,
with the Raleigh Chamber. Charlotte's a bigger city, so
mm,
Raleigh kind of has that 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 traditional chamber that's really robust. And I think in Charlotte, it's a little bit more, diverse in different areas. So we wanted to make sure that we approached Greenville with that openness to say, what does work here? We wanted to, we wanted we wanted to have time to understand, to learn, and then start to reach out and see where our services fit in. That's about building trust. It's not something that comes quickly, or just it's not given, really. You have to earn it.
yeah, that's so important to make sure that you're asking those questions. What works here? Sometimes the chamber is a big deal in some towns. Sometimes it's not. I've definitely seen that, and it's always surprising what's really important in some towns isn't as big of a deal in other towns. And yeah, it's really important to just sort of ask people and see, where does everyone go to connect here? And um,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, in the industry organizations too, you can
Mhm,
see it in different industry organizations where ULI might be really big in one area,
mhm,
or Crew, for instance, commercial real
mhm,
estate women. There's really strong chapters, and then there's chapters that maybe don't have the same, or
mhm,
SMPS where it's really strong in one market. For instance, the Charlotte market, very strong SMPS,
mhm,
community there, and I love it. So just being able to be adaptable and flexible to those things.
mhm, absolutely. So, the other thing that I know you and Sophia talked about were really fleshing out and identifying measurable differentiators. And I
Mhm.
love that. And I'd love to hear your take on some examples of what that looks like at Optima and kind of how you've done that for the firm.
So one of the things we wanted to do when we were looking at Greenville, we wanted to find those key differentiators and really showcase those. What do we offer that maybe others don't? How does it directly benefit our clients? Things like that. And so when we looked at Greenville, we found a bit of a gap in. There are definitely firms that offer the full service kind of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, but we found that there wasn't a lot of firms that offered the in-house technology, lighting design, commissioning, some of the additional services that our team offers, and having that all in
Mm,
one firm, and being able to provide all the services in a so that it's a well coordinated project internally for
mm,
our clients has really been helpful. And our biggest differentiator is that net zero and
mm,
sustainable designs. Our team and brings decades of experience in solar PV and geothermal and high performance building systems, energy modeling. So that's been something that has really driven our
mm.
decision making in one, just project designs, but also how we approach, and something that we really, I think our clients really value, that we can look at a project from inception and see how we can improve efficiencies on those projects.
That's great. Yeah. I think that that's the critical point that you just made is our clients value that. So that's always it's that figuring out what's unique about your firm and then figuring out do clients care,
Right.
and finding that intersection. So it looks like you were able to really find that that intersection, and that's the critical point. Because it doesn't matter if nobody cares about whether what's unique. So
Right, exactly.
yeah, yeah, that's great. um how are you and how are you communicating those differentiators? Is it different per market, or are you finding that that those differentiators tend to stand out in every market that you're in?
Um, the sustainability part of our, the differentiator of our sustainability, that we've actually done a number of net zero schools in South Carolina in the Horry County area. So that's something that kind of really kicked off a lot of our net zero, um, that side of our business model. So that was something that existed already.
Mm.
So being able to showcase that, but I also think one of the things that's really important is it's hard to showcase reputation. So it's really building that. It's not
Mm.
something that you can, it's leaning on your previous experience. It's leaning on previous client experience. It's that brand presence. It's really bringing that to the forefront because that's something that's not as, it's a little harder to illustrate. It's really about making those connections and making sure that people can trust you.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a service, you're selling a service and a knowledge and an expertise. So there's other people that, there's other firms that have the same expertise. So you're leaning on a different set of differentiators that
Yeah.
is has a nuance to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a different than selling that product. Absolutely. Um, and the last thing I want to talk to you about is that there's often this idea that you have to spend this gigantic sum of money to get noticed in front of the right audiences. And you're saying, look, there are ways to, build that brand awareness, make those connections without, the huge budget. What are some ways that you're doing that that doesn't necessarily include that huge budget?
Yeah, I think going into a market, and especially a new market, I don't want to underestimate or discount the fact that it does require
Right.
an investment,
Right.
securing office locations, talent acquisition. But I do think some of the things that make a lasting and long-term success aren't necessarily always the big advertising budget dollars. Sometimes it's really engaging chambers or economic development organizations, making yourself present at city council meetings or planning meetings and getting involved in the municipality side of things, and starting to get involved in community involvement. Giving back to a community, I think,
Mm.
is a really important way
Hmm.
to show your commitment and be a part of that business community that you want to be welcomed into. And also helping in, if there's educational workforce programs. I think there's ways that you can provide your time, um, and really let yourself immerse into what that kind of, what is that, and that makes that community different and unique, and learn about it, and really find your space and your place in that landscape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like, and also being inquisitive about what this community cares about, what works in this community, and taking the time to build those local relationships. While that might not have a dollar amount to it, that can go very, very far. So, absolutely. That is the kind of thing that makes a big impact long term. So, and I know it has a time cost to it, right? But yeah, those kind of things are, and it's a culture thing internally that often people like you have to create internally for it to happen. So,
Yeah, I think
I
there's
love
a
to see that.
balance in finding, you have to make data driven decisions in markets, and
Hmm.
you have to do all those things. But I think there's a balance in um, both those,
Mm.
the connectivity as well as the
Hmm.
data driven business, decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to give you the opportunity. Is there one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with on this topic? Because we have clients entering new markets right now. So I'd love to, from someone who's done it recently. Do you have any wisdom to share? Final wisdom?
Yeah, I think, entering a new market can always feel a little overwhelming. It feels like the new kid in class sometimes, where friendships and routines may have already been established. And I think, you got to find your space and build that trust to get a seat at the table. It can feel a lot sometimes like an uphill battle, but I think if you stay true to your firm's core services, your values, integrity, and, people will take notice of that. They will start to gravitate towards that. I think being consistent and reliable, those are things that with a solid strategic plan to enter a market, I think that really sets somebody up for long-term success.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. So we have been talking to Suzanne Epps of Optima Engineering. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.